Hi, welcome to the Rewind the Timeline podcast brought to you by thetimelinemachine.com. I am your host, the Timeline King. This is the podcast where we go back in time and take a look at all the pop culture anniversaries that have happened this past week, whether it's the 10-year anniversary, 25-year, 35-year, 50-year anniversaries, and so on. This is episode 20 of this podcast, and for this episode, we will be looking at all the pop culture anniversaries that have happened from August 13th all the way until August 19th. So let us begin. Actually, before we begin with the anniversaries, I want to talk about a couple of movies I saw this week. I finally got to participate in Barbieheimer. So for those of you who don't know what that is, both Barbie and Oppenheimer were released on the same day last month. So the internet likes to link these two widely divergent movies together. I decided to get on the bandwagon as well and finally saw these movies back to back. So first, let's begin with Barbie, which I thought was absolutely great. I know Barbie gets some hate from like certain segments of the population, but I don't really think it deserves it. I mean, you obviously have to know what you're getting when you go into it, and you have to know that this is a movie that's targeting women, and it is about women and women's issues, but the movie works as a fun parody. Like, it doesn't take itself like too seriously. It's bright, colorful, and cheerful. It's definitely a weird movie at times, but I had a great time watching it, and I will say that there are definitely some plot holes associated with this movie if you think too hard about it, but I don't think you're supposed to think too hard about it. I think it's just meant to be like a good time at the theaters, which it does succeed with. Now Oppenheimer is on the other end of that spectrum, and it deals with like complete darkness and death. However, this is like another really good Christopher Nolan movie, and I will say that it also definitely feels like a Christopher Nolan movie as well. The movie is shown in like anachronic order, not in chronological order, and there are certain portions that are in like black and white, and the third act feels like it could or it should have been like an entirely separate movie. And there's a surprise villain in this movie that I don't feel like fully works, and there's also like a bunch of sound issues that make this movie kind of hard to hear at times. And I noticed that's been a problem with like Nolan movies ever since like Dark Knight Rises. Maybe it has something to do with like him using IMAX cameras to record it. I don't know. However, the movie does like have the best of like what Christopher Nolan does, which is like, he has gorgeous cinematography in all of his films, and he's a director like who clearly knows what he wants, and he does what he wants, and you can tell that there's like no studio interference in this movie. It's definitely Nolan's vision, and I like that he puts an emphasis on like a character journey. There's a lot of like Oppenheimer definitely does go through a transition in this movie, and it does show. And it's because of that, like I really like this movie and like all the actors' portrayals of their characters in this movie. And apparently this movie was made like without any CGI. The atomic explosion that they mimic, the big Trinity test, that was all done with practical effects. And that's like impressive, especially considering like this week is also like the 50th anniversary of the first film that ever used CGI, Westworld. And speaking of which, let's get to the anniversaries this week. First is August 13th. This is 75 years ago, August 13th, 1948. We have the release of the comic book Batman number 49. So this comic features the first appearance of the Batman villain Mad Hatter, and also the first appearance of Batman love interest Vicki Vale. Now, compared to villains like the Joker and love interests like Catwoman, characters like Mad Hatter and Vicki Vale are relatively obscure to mainstream audiences, but I can assure you that they play an important part to the Batman mythos. Mad Hatter is based on the character from Alice in Wonderland, so he hasn't been adapted yet into a live-action Batman movie, but he has definitely appeared on Batman television. He appeared in the 1966 Adam West TV show, as well as more recently in Gotham. Vicki Vale, however, has had more exposure in popular media. She was in the 1989 Tim Burton Batman movie, where she was played by Kim Basinger. So happy 75 years to Mad Hatter and Vicki Vale. Next, we move to looking at the anniversaries on August 14th. First is 75 years ago, August 14th, 1948, we have the birth of actor Joseph Marcell in Castries, St. Lucia. Though Marcel was born in the Caribbean, he moved to London when he was 9 years old and he grew up in that area. Originally, he was working as an electrical engineer, but one day him and his friends passed by a show done by the American Negro Theater, and that's what inspired him to become an actor. So he then became a classically trained actor in theater, and he acted in mostly like Shakespeare plays. Obviously, his most famous role was as Jeffrey Butler in The Fresh Prince of Bel Air. Jeffrey has had so many great one-liners throughout the series that it's like hard to keep track. Now he was definitely like a great addition to the cast, and like part of the reason that like the show was so memorable was just because of like his performance and like the chemistry that he had with all the actors, like Will Smith included. Now, The Fresh Prince ran for 6 seasons, and Mostel still says like he gets recognized everywhere he goes for playing Jeffrey. People yell at him, "Yo, G," and it's become to the point where if he doesn't get recognized, he feels like there's just something wrong, something wrong there. So happy 75th birthday to Joseph Marcell. And next is 25 years ago, August 14th, 1998, we have the 25th anniversary of three movies: Air Bud, Golden Receiver, How Stella Got Her Groove Back, and The Avengers. Air Bud, Golden Receiver was the sequel to Air Bud, which came out the previous year in 1997. If you're a 90s kid like I was, you know that the first Air Bud is about the dog who can play basketball. Well, in this one, he comes back and he's now playing football. I remember I really liked the first Air Bud movie. I felt like there was a lot of heart to it. So I checked out the second one, and compared to the first one, it was like a complete letdown. It didn't have any of the heart or charm that the first film had, and it didn't even have like good production values. At first, like I just thought this was like a cheap direct-to-video film, and I had no idea that this was like actually released in theaters. I think that there was like a basic problem with the premise. Like the first movie kind of made me believe in the idea that like a dog can play basketball, but in this one they just didn't do a good enough job of like selling me on the idea that this same dog could also play football. uh, and it's interesting because you know what I actually found out, like Air Bud was actually based on a real dog who was trained by his owner to play like basketball, baseball, football, hockey, soccer, whatever. And then that dog became famous when he appeared on America's Funniest Home Videos. So showing that he's able to like bounce a basketball into like a hoop. So this Airbud movie was based on this dog that starred him. And the dog didn't star in the sequel, unfortunately. Like he had cancer, like by the time production started, and he died. But this real life dog, he created a franchise that continued on without him, and it entertained millions of people. So yeah, happy 25 years to Airbud Golden Receiver. The other movie released was How Stella Got Her Groove Back, based on the book by Terry McMillan. This is one of those like typical romantic comedy movies about like a 40-year-old trying to find love. Tay Diggs is in this movie, and it is like his film debut. We all know he would have a long career outside this movie. And I gotta hand it to Angela Bassett. Like she was 40 years old when this movie came out, and it seems like she has not aged a day since. Black really doesn't crack. And the last movie that came out that day was The Avengers. No. This isn't the same as Marvel's The Avengers. This Avengers was based on an old 1960s British TV show. This one stars Ray Fine as John Steed and Uma Thurman as Emma Peel. Now, Steed and Peel are two secret agents who battle like Sean Connery in this movie. Sean Connery plays like a mad scientist named Sir August de Winter, who is like bent on controlling the world's weather. The movie is just as stupid as it sounds, and apparently audiences felt the same way. Now, this movie like bombed at the box office, and is considered like one of the worst movies ever to be made. One reviewer even wrote like, this Avengers film is so horrendously, painfully, and thoroughly awful that it gives like other cinematic clunkers like Ishtar and Howard the Duck a good name. It's funny how the previous summer, like Batman and Robin, was also released to like similar dislike, and both movies like star Uma Thurman. So I feel like she was just like box office poison at the time. But yeah, happy 25th anniversary to Airbud Golden Receiver, How Stella Got a Groove Back, and the Avengers. Next, we go to 10 years ago, August 14th, 2013. We have the release of the film Kick Ass 2. This is based on the comic book by Mark Millar and a sequel to the first Kick Ass in 2020. I think I'm on the same page as most reviewers when it comes to this movie, in that it doesn't really manage to recapture the original's humor or violence. What I remember about this movie more than the actual film itself was like the behind the scenes controversy surrounding it. The movie was shot before the Sandy Hook shooting, which happened on December 14th, 2012. After that, Jim Carrey, who plays Colonel Stars and Stripes in this movie, he condemned this film for like its overuse of violence. And I was able to find the exact quote by Carey. He said, I did kick ass for a month before Sandy Hook, and now, in all good conscience, I cannot support that level of violence. My apologies to others involved with the film. I am not ashamed of it, but recent events have caused a change in my heart. I remember the actors and producers didn't really take Carrie's side. Chloe Grace Moretz, who plays Hit Girl in the film, she responded by saying, like, it's a movie. If you're going to believe and be affected by an action film, you shouldn't go to see Pocahontas because you are going to think you are a Disney princess. If you are that easily swayed, you might see The Silence of the Lambs and think you are a serial killer. It's a movie and it's fake, and I've known that since I was a kid. I don't want to run around trying to kill people and cuss. If anything, these movies teach you not to do that. Um, like Chloe Grace Moretz, I don't know if I really can relate to like Jim Carrey's side either, but I know that Sandy Hook was an emotional event for like a lot of people, so I can understand him taking the decision to do what he did and back out of supporting the film. But regardless, happy 10 years to Kick Ass 2. Also 10 years ago, August 14th, 2013, we have the season 4 premiere of Duck Dynasty. This is very notable because it brought in 11.8 million viewers, which was then like a new record for a cable nonfiction telecast. Like with all ratings records, it will probably not be beaten anytime soon because like the world has flocked so much to streaming in the past 10 years. If you don't know what Duck Dynasty is, it is a reality show on A&E that lasted from 2012 to 2017. It was about the Robertson family and their duck hunting business. Not really a premise that appeals to me, but it had a lot of fans, and they showed their support on this day. So next we go to August 15th. First is 75 years ago, August 15th, 1948. We have the first live nightly news. CBS Television News became the first network to do 15-minute news reports every weeknight starting this day, and the first anchor they put was Douglas Edwards. So this is a trend that has like not stopped since then. Every network has had their own like live nightly news. So happy 75 years to the nightly news. Next is 50 years ago, August 15th, 1973. We have the release of the film Jesus Christ Superstar. This was an adaptation of the popular musical by Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber, and it deals with the conflict between Judas and Jesus prior to Jesus' crucifixion. I wasn't alive when this movie came out, but it received like a lot of mixed reviews at the time, and I imagine that's standard for like anything based on religion. You're going to generate your share of controversy with that. But even normal reviews were kind of felt like all the leads didn't really fill their roles that well. That like a majority of it was miscast. But you can check out the movie and make your own judgment. Happy 50 years to Jesus Christ Superstar. Next is 25 years ago, August 15th, 1998, we have the birth of the Fox Family Channel. Originally, this was just called The Family Channel. Then Fox and Saban bought this network and it became Fox Family. Now, Saban was the same company who was responsible for most of what was on like Fox Kids. And as like a huge Fox Kids baby growing up, I was like beyond excited for the Fox Family Channel, especially when they started doing reruns of the old Fox Kids lineup, like Life with Louie and whatever. So this quickly became like my new favorite channel, and I enjoyed like a lot of the new shows shows that they brought on, like Big Wolf on Campus and Ripley's Believe It or Not. Even British imports like Mr. Bean and S Club 7. This is where like I first discovered them on this channel. But Fox Family only lasted like a few years. Apparently, it wasn't making as much money as Saban or Fox wanted, so both of them sold their stake to Disney, and this channel turned into ABC Family in 2001. But 1998 to 2001 were like a few good years for this network, and a lot of like what Fox Family originated still remains with the network today, like the 13 nights of Halloween and the 25 Days of Christmas. So happy 25 years to the Fox Family channel. Now let's go to August 16th. First is 35 years ago, August 16th, 1988, we have the birth of Rumer Willis in Pacoota, Kentucky. So she is the daughter of actors Bruce Willis and Demi Moore. Rumer Willis has done some acting herself. She appeared in the movies The House Bunny, Sorority Row, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, as well as the TV shows 90210 and Empire. But she never really got anywhere near the same level of fame as her parents. But what can you do? We're not all talented, right? Happy 35th birthday to Rumer Willis. Next is 25 years ago, August 16th, 1998. We have the debut of the television film National Lampoon's Men in White. This is also Fox Family Channel's first original movie, and it was meant to be like a spoof on the alien invasion movies that were popular in the 1990s, like Independence Day or Men in Black. The fact that no one has heard of this movie means that it isn't any good, of course. But anyway, happy 25 years to National Lampoon's Men in White. Also 25 years ago, again on August 16th, 1998, we have the premiere of a few new Oh Yeah cartoons. The first is Max and His Special Problem. So this is the first of two Max cartoons created by David Wasson, who would later create Time Squad for Cartoon Network. So this one is notable because it was also co-created by Chris Miller, who would later do the Lego Movie and 21 Jump Street. Anyway, Max is about this guy like who loses his brain at work. Like he literally loses his brain. And he has to spend the rest of the short like finding where his brain went. So I thought like this was like a really great and fun short. There's very little dialogue in this, but like the mood and animation, like they do a really great job of like conveying the tone. And David Wasson like did such a great job. He won an Emmy for this short, and I feel like that's 100% deserved. Like this short definitely recommends to be checked out. And the next one is Tutu the Superina. So the word Superina is a combination of superhero and ballerina. So this is like a ballerina themed superhero, and this cartoon is just as absurd as like that sounds. So forget Buffy, forget Wonder Woman. So we should have gotten like a full series about like this superhero. This is like another really good one. The last new cartoon for this week is Blotto. This is the only Oh Yeah cartoon that was a full musical, and it starts out really good. Like Wayne Brady does the vocals for this character, Blotto, who lives in a world of like black and white ink. Blotto likes this other ink drawing girl named Dotto, who lives in a world full of color. The two then get into wits with Balloon Goon, who lives in a world of comic book panels. And I really like the design for like all these characters and all the worlds that this cartoon sets up. However, right around like the 4 minute mark, so we're talking like 4 minutes out of a 7 minute cartoon, you introduce this like director character, right? And he has like nothing to do with like Blotto, Dotto, or Balloon Goon. And it really feels like this cartoon just comes to a full halt as soon as he shows up. So the music and lyrics that were like so good before just now suddenly make no sense. I don't even think the words rhyme like at that point. But however, like, I still would recommend checking this short out anyway. I felt like the first 2/3 of the short it's some of the best animation in Oh Yeah, and I would recommend checking Blotto out. So happy 25th anniversary to Blotto, Tutu the Superina, and Max and His Special Problem. Next is 10 years ago, August 16th, 2013, we have the release of two movies, Jobs and Lee Daniels' The Butler. I saw Jobs. Like this was the movie, or rather I should say one of the movies, based on Steve Jobs' life. Now Ashton Kutcher plays Steve Jobs, and the movie kind of shows the story of like Jobs' life from when he was in college in 1974 to when the iPod was like introduced in 2001. I thought Ashton Kutcher did a really good job of portraying Steve Jobs. I was surprised like how much he actually looks like him. But I felt like story wise, the movie sanitizes Jobs a lot. Jobs was definitely a visionary, and he should be commended for that. But the dude had so much controversy associated with him. Especially in the way that like he dealt with his coworkers or he dealt with his family, and the movie doesn't really delve into like the dark sides of Jobs. So I would say check it out if you want a skin deep portrayal of Jobs, but you're probably not going to get anything else besides that in this movie. And then Lee Daniels, The Butler, is another movie that kind of has the same problem in the historical accuracy department. So this was only said to be like inspired by a true life story, but the Butler like depicts Forrest Whitaker as like a black butler who is a witness to like many of the political and social events of the 20th century during his tenure as a White House butler. And it all comes to a head when Forrest Whitaker meets the first black president in 2009. And one good thing about this performance is, it's like Whitaker's performance like really sells the idea. And I feel like even if the writing isn't strong, there's like, there's just a lot of like good going in with this. Yeah, in fact, there's like a lot of good black actors in this movie, and everyone here is like talented enough to carry the film. But I just feel like it could have been a little improved in the story department. And I will also say that there's a reason that this movie is called Lee Daniels The Butler and not just The Butler. It's because another studio had a movie called The Butler that was released in 1916, and they wouldn't allow Lee Daniels to use the same title, so he had to call it Lee Daniels The Butler instead. It's stupid, I know, but corporations are not really in the business of helping each other succeed, right? Happy 10 years to Jobs and Lee Daniels The Butler. Also, 10 years ago, again on August 16th, 2013, we had a rare Google outage. So, Google went offline for about like 5 minutes on this day, and that sent all the Google services, Google Search, YouTube, Gmail, Google Drive, offline as well. It is estimated that 40% of the world's internet traffic was lost during that time. However, no matter how desperate anybody got, Bing was apparently never considered an option. And next is August 17th. This is 50 years ago, August 17th, 1973. We have the release of the film Westworld. This movie was directed and written by Michael Crichton, who would also later write Jurassic Park. Westworld is a movie about an amusement park called Westworld, where like cowboy robots go haywire. Now, Jurassic Park is is a story about an amusement park where the dinosaurs go haywire. So Michael Crichton basically used the same script and just replaced robots with dinosaurs. Now, this movie is notable for a couple of firsts in Hollywood. It is the first film to use CGI. There's a scene where we see through the robot's eyes, and the way that they make the effect is through rotoscoping and computer-generated imagery. It is the first time like this technology was ever used in a movie, and look at the world like 50 years later. We have entire movies created with CGI now, and Westworld is also the first movie to mention the use of a computer virus, which would become like a pretty standard trope in all like future Hollywood computer-based films. And I think this technology, the technology and effects of Westworld still hold up. The basic premise is definitely solid, and you can understand why like HBO remade it into a TV series like 50 years later. So happy 50 years to Westworld. Now we move to August 18th. First is 25 years ago, August 18th, 1998. We have the launch of the website Rotten Tomatoes. If you've been living in a cave for the past 25 years, Rotten Tomatoes is a review aggregator website for film and television. Back when this website launched, it was a novelty. Every film has like a bunch of critics who like it and hate it, and this website, it takes all those scores and it puts it together. So, for example, let's say a movie like Westworld has a score of 86 on Rotten Tomatoes, right? So it has that score of 86 because 86% of the reviews that Rotten Tomatoes has collected would give Westworld a 6 or higher. So Westworld has an audience score of 70%, which means that 70% of the audience would give this movie a 6 or higher. Now, this kind of rating system does generate some controversy. I mean, after all, like movie reviews are subjective. What is considered an 8 to me might be considered a 6 to somebody else. However, I think the reviews serve as a good starting point for anybody who wonders, should I check out this latest movie or not? Like if I see a movie with an 86% score on Rotten Tomatoes, I know that there's going to be a higher chance that I'm going to like it versus a movie that I see with a 20% score for. And for that, we have to commend Rotten Tomatoes. You know, their tomato meter has been such a big thing that I always see it in advertisements. Like for Blue Beetle, they advertise it as an 88% score, so that obviously means it must be good, right? I hope so, you know, since I'm planning on checking it out. You know, in fact, that's how you know, like, when a movie is bad, when they don't show the Rotten Tomatoes score on on the advertisements. And in honor of like the 25th anniversary of Rotten Tomatoes, Rotten Tomatoes had fans pick out like the best TV show and the best movie of the past 25 years. So the best TV show was Breaking Bad, and the best movie was The Dark Knight. And I mean, obviously, these are both excellent choices. So happy 25 years to Rotten Tomatoes. Also, 25 years ago, again on August 18th, 1998, we have the premiere of the TV series Oh No, Mr. Bill Presents, which aired on the Fox Family Channel. This is based on the character Mr. Bill, who originally appeared in Saturday Night Live segments. Now, they aired the show late on television. I think it was at like 11 p.m. or something like that, so I never got a chance to see it like when it was actually on the air. And sadly, like there are only like a few episodes online, so I don't even know like who has access to like the entire series. You know, it might be in the Fox Family archives or somewhere in a vault. You know, if you can find the episodes on YouTube, check it out. Happy 25 years to Oh No, Mr. Bill Presents. Now we end the week with August 19th. First is 50 years ago, August 19th, 1973, we have the birth of actor Ahmed Best in New York City. Ahmed Best is best known for his role as Jar Jar Binks in the Star Wars prequels. You know, so he did everything for Jar Jar. He voiced him. He also played him on set wearing motion capture technology. So he wasn't technically the one who animated him. The VFX people did that. But much in the same way that like Andy Serkis kind of embodies Caesar in the New Planet of the Apes, Ahmed Best is pretty much like Jar Jar Binks, you know, embodied. Now, it's no secret that like Jar Jar wasn't like a well liked character. I mean, he must have appealed to children, I'm sure, but he was like pretty much despised by all the fans of the original trilogy who felt like the character was a little goofy for the Star Wars universe. You know, 6 years ago, Ahmed Best talked about like his time playing Jar Jar. He said that it was brutal when the Phantom Menace came out. He said that he had death threats throughout the internet. He had people come to him and say like, "You destroyed my childhood." Ahmed Best was only 25 when Phantom Menace came out, so you can imagine that it was a difficult thing for him. And he says that like he even contemplated suicide because of it. You know, so I mean, whether you like the character of Jar Jar or you hate Jar Jar, I don't think it's fair to take out the frustration on the actor, who is ultimately just doing a performance and has no like creative control over like what the director's vision is aside from like following the directions given to him. You know. However, Best seems to have earned some goodwill again recently when he played the Jedi Kelleran Buke on The Mandalorian. Now, I haven't heard a single bad thing about his performance there, even though like season 3 of The Mandalorian is considered pretty lackluster overall. You know, so it shows that some people can earn redemption in the fans' eyes, regardless. So happy 50th birthday to Ahmed Best. Next is 35 years ago, August 19th, 1988. We have the release of two movies: A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, and Married to the Mob. Yeah, I haven't seen either of these movies, so let's just move on. Also, 35 years ago, again on August 19th, 1988, we have the birth of Veronica Roth in New York City. Veronica Roth would be known as the author of the Divergent series of books. So that's Divergent, Insurgent, Allegiant. I hate to say it, but these are definitely like Hunger Games ripoffs. The same teenage girl in a dystopian future, trying to survive in a crazy world while at the same time having two different guys going after her. Yeah, it's definitely a lot like Hunger Games when you read its basic description. It's not as good as the Hunger Games though. And that being said, I did like these books, and if you're a fan of like young adult dystopian fiction, I would recommend checking it out. They even have like a few movies based on them, starring Shailene Woodley. Yeah, happy 35th birthday to Veronica Roth. And last anniversary for this week, it's a tragic one. This is 10 years ago, August 19th, 2013. We have the death of actor Lee Thompson Young. Lee Thompson Young committed suicide on this day. He was supposed to show up for work on Rizzolian Isles, and when he didn't, the police were called to do a well-being check. Young had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression, so when the police found his body, it was reported that he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. I had followed Lee Thompson Young's work ever since I was a kid. Like he acted in Disney Channel's the famous Jet Jackson. Then he was in the movie Friday Night Lights. He was Cyborg on Smallville, and he was a regular on Rizzolian Isles. So the guy had a lot of talent, and he went further than like a lot of other child actors from the same time. So it's a shame like he died in this way. So Young's family launched the Lee Thompson Young Foundation shortly after his death, in the hopes that they could like provide a way for others to talk about like mental health and grief. It's such a stigma in like American society that this is a good foundation and they have like a good cause. So look them up and donate or share however you can. Rest in peace, Lee Thompson Young. And that's it for this week's episode. Tune in next week for episode 20 of this podcast. Follow us on Facebook at The Timeline Machine and Instagram at Waste My Time Machine to keep up to date on all the anniversaries. And remember, keep rewinding the timeline. Bye.